The massive hull of the merchant vessel Prometheus shattered outward like a molting skin, revealing the jagged, black-ribbed silhouette of a dreadnought-class warship. Beneath the shredded plating, rows of heavy mass drivers angled toward the Ossuary fleet. A single, low-frequency pulse rippled through the Ethelgard vacuum. Was this a rescue or a harvest? The silence of the void is deeper when you're waiting for an answer that might never come. If you want to witness the moment the galaxy's quietest species finally stops whispering, subscribe to these chronicles. Now, let us look back at the shadow that preceded the storm. 3 hours before the first hull plate detoured into deep space, High Warden Kovacs sat in a simple wooden chair at the center of the Orion Hegemony's High Council. The chair was an eyesore of grain and joinery amidst the floating, iridescent platforms of the Mycelium Collective and the Exarch. The prelate Valerius paced his dais, his 4 arms gesturing frantically at the tactical holos. The Ossuary fleet was a moving wall of bone-white ships, a plague of biological harvesters currently turning the Ethelgard border colonies into silent tombs. They didn't just conquer. They consumed every organic scrap until only the dust of the original inhabitants remained. We have calculated the attrition, the Exarch's voice echoed, a synthetic chime that carried no warmth. Our fleets are failing. The Mycelium has lost 3 spore ships in the last rotation. We have no choice but to initiate the Great Migration. We require the Terran merchant fleet for refugee transport. Kovacs didn't look up. She sat with her spine straight against the hard wood of her chair, her hands resting flat on her knees. To the council, she looked like a primitive relic, a representative of a species that had traded its warriors for cargo manifests and its anger for the slow, steady rhythm of interstellar commerce. Refugee transport, Kovacs repeated. Her voice was sandpaper and gravel, devoid of the musicality the hegemony prized. You want us to be the lifeboats. You are the only ones with the sheer volume of hulls nearby, Valerius snapped, his secondary eyes blinking in irritation. Your peaceful simplicity is finally of some use, Warden. Your ships are slow, unarmed, and numerous. They are perfect for a quiet retreat while we buy you time with the remnants of our honor. The Mycelium representative let out a puff of bioluminescent spores, a sign of mourning or perhaps pity. It is a heavy burden for such a soft species. But Ethelgard will not be a graveyard for your people if you move now. Kovacs finally looked at them. Her eyes weren't soft. They were the color of cold flint, reflecting the glow of the dying systems on the monitors. Ethelgard will not be a graveyard, she said, her voice dropping an octave. But the ossuary will be a memory. The council chamber erupted in a chorus of clicking mandibles and synthetic laughter. They saw a woman in a wooden chair making threats with a fleet of rust buckets. They didn't see the predator that had once ruled the caves, merely wearing the mask of the merchant to see if the galaxy could be trusted with its peace. When the stakes are this high, the truth is the only currency left to spend. Subscribe now to see the ledger being balanced in blood. The hegemony is about to learn that some silences are a choice, not a weakness. Kovacs reached into her tunic and pulled out a small, archaic-looking data chip. She slotted it into the arm of her chair, the only piece of technology hidden within the hand-carved oak. Covenant Protocol 7 is active, she whispered. The command didn't go to the Council's relays. It bypassed their shimmering networks entirely, riding a tight beam tachyon burst that ignited across every Terran vessel from the core to the rim. On 10,000 cargo haulers, the hum of civilian life support was replaced by the high-pitched whine of capacitors charging. Units that had no business being on a merchant ship. The council chamber's holographic displays flickered, then bled into a uniform, pulsing crimson. Prelate Valerius felt the air in the room grow heavy, ionized by a power source his sensors couldn't even categorize. On the main tactical rift, the thousands of blue icons representing the Terran refugee fleet didn't scatter. They converged. Valerius watched, his mandibles frozen, as the merchant vessel Prometheus, a ship he had mocked for its bulk and rusted plating, began to tear itself apart from the inside. It wasn't an explosion. It was a shedding. Massive slabs of pressurized hull plating drifted away, discarded like dead skin, to reveal a skeletal obsidian frame humming with the lethal glow of tachyon arrays. "What is this?" Valerius demanded, his voice cracking as he looked down at Kovacs. "You told us these were haulers. You've been moving illegal ordnance through hegemony space for decades." Kovacs didn't stand. She remained seated in that archaic, wooden chair, her fingers tapping a slow, rhythmic beat against the armrest. "We told you we were merchants, prelate. We never said what we were selling. Today, the price of entry into Ethelgard is death, and we're the only ones who can afford the bill." The Ossuair's Alpha Prime fleet, a nightmare of calcified bone ships and organic tendrils, surged forward to intercept. They expected soft hulls and panicked civilians. Instead, they met the Vanguard's shadow. A single volley from its mass driver arrays turned the leading Ossuair hive ship into a cloud of splintered calcium and freezing marrow. Grand Admiral Vance's face appeared on a secondary screen. Not a merchant captain, but a man whose eyes held the cold precision of a professional executioner. He didn't offer a parley. He didn't broadcast a warning. He simply began the systematic dismantling of a threat the hegemony had spent years fearing. And now, in the tribunal hall, under the silence of 300 species, Kovacs still hadn't moved. The roar of the battle was a distant vibration beneath the floorboards, a hum of Terran technology proving that the primitives had spent 2 centuries perfecting the art of the end. Valerius leaned forward, his primary eyes fixed on the screen where the Ossuair flagship was being carved into pieces by experimental beams. "You've lied to us?" Valerius whispered, the horror of the deception finally sinking in. "You've hidden an empire of fire behind a mask of wood and wool." "We chose peace," Kovacs said, her voice cutting through the panic of the chamber. "We chose to be merchants because being soldiers was too easy for us. But when we offer mercy, we don't bring lifeboats. We bring the fire that ensures you never need them again." The Ossuair fleet didn't just retreat. They broke. Their unconditional surrender was broadcast on every frequency, a frantic plea for a cessation of the Terran peace that was currently erasing their history. Kovacs finally stood, the simple wooden chair scraping against the polished floor of the council chamber. The sound was louder than any of the hegemony's synthetic chimes. She looked at the gathered leaders of the galaxy, her expression unreadable and terrifyingly calm. "The mask of the merchant has slipped," she said, glancing at the tactical map where Ethelgard remained untouched, while the Ossuair space was being restructured by Terran peacekeepers. "The predator is out of the cave now. I suggest you remember how we treat our friends." She walked toward the exit, leaving the council in the shadow of their own inadequacy. The wooden chair remained at the center of the room, a silent, grounded monument of oak amidst the failing lights of an empire that had forgotten what true power looked like. The galaxy is a different place when you realize the person holding the door open is the same one who can lock it forever. Did the hegemony deserve the truth, or was the lie the only thing keeping them safe? Subscribe to see what happens when the Silent Legions decide they're finished playing merchant. The next chronicle begins tomorrow.